Everything is coming to an end. We're all doomed, the oceans are rising and they're filled with plastic and sharks. There are too many people, there's not enough food. We're running out of resources and the apocalypse is just over the horizon. But thankfully, Tom Passmore from Dsposal is going to save us.
Am I?
No, don't worry, we just needed a dramatic intro. This podcast is a 3-part series called Tech for Good Live and the Circular Economy. It's part of the Disruptive Innovation Festival 2018, and we're going to talk about, you guessed it, the circular economy. Is it a model that can save us from planetary crisis, or just a nice idea that will never work? So Tom, why are we in the podcast booth?
So a couple of months ago I did a talk for Tech for Good Live all about the circular economy, and since then I have done loads more research into it and about this kind of concept around no zero burden and the waste industry. So I thought I'd come and talk to you about it.
So we're doing a podcast, and this is relevant to you because you have a startup called Dsposal, which is waste industry related.
Exactly. I set up a green tech startup called Dsposal to digitally connect the waste industry. And this whole idea...
Which is more interesting than it sounds. I really love it.
Yeah, which is much more interesting. The waste industry is fascinating, and it's one of the things that I've started to get involved in with the circular economy is this idea of... waste, whose responsibility is waste, and what happens to waste when people throw it away. So since I did that talk, I've gone off and I've kind of gone, right, what else do we need to learn about? And been talking to loads of people for this festival, the Disruptive Innovation Festival, and I thought, let's do a podcast. Let's get Tech for Good Live involved.
Okay, well, let's do it. But let's start at the beginning. So what's the circular economy?
Okay, so great place to start. So one of the people I interviewed will be able to answer that. Her name is Amanda.
So, a little bit about me. I am a chartered waste and resource manager. I've been working within the industry for about 19 years. Currently, I work in the Faculty of Science and Engineering, and I'm the Waste to Resource Innovation Network Manager. It's a big, long title, but essentially, it provides a cross-faculty approach to drive forward the circular economy through research and knowledge exchange, and this is both internally across our different faculties and externally to our business partners. Probably the last thing I needed to tell you is that I'm the lead for the Circular Economy Club Manchester.
So that's Amanda Reid, and I asked her to explain what we mean when we say the circular economy.
You could explain it as a framework that takes insights from living systems. It moves us away from our existing linear, our take, make, use, dispose model, to one of where products and components are kept to their highest value. It would aim to reduce natural resource use through ability to deconstruct, reuse, repurpose materials, which are then manufactured back into products.
Okay, so Amanda's telling me basically it's like recycling, only better.
Yeah, so, I mean, Amanda kind of talks briefly there about this idea of the take, make, lose model. So that's the idea that's the economy that we've got at the moment. So you take something from the earth, you make it into something, and then you lose it, you throw it away, you dispose of it. And then, Amanda kind of talks about that recycling side of things. But the circular economy is so much more than just recycling. It's one of the things I've been talking to the MacArthur Foundation and Ken Webster about.
My name is Ken Webster, currently Head of Innovation at the MacArthur Foundation. We specialise in encouraging the transition towards a circular economy. And we work with government, we work with business, and we work in education and with industry. Well, certainly recycling is part of it because it's just so obvious. If you're going to have a circular economy, you're going to have some recycling in it. The problem, if you like, with recycling is you've lost almost all the value in the material because all the inherent quality and opportunity you might have with products or components or parts, by the time it gets to recycling as we generally understand it, mashing materials up and trying to reduce them to their basic molecules or links in that way, that's most of the value gone, and that's a business loss. So if you can keep it in highest value at all times, in higher value at all times, there's more business opportunity. So recycling's essential, but it's sort of like the loop of last resort. There are lots of other things that can be done to bring in business value, reduce impact on the environment, create jobs, and that's really what the circular economy is about, thinking through how materials flow, how products, components and materials interact with, say, product design, or how different business models might mean you could eliminate some sorts of materials anyway. So, yeah, recycling, excellent, essential, but it's not just recycling ramped up to the nth degree.
I'm loving what Ken says about recycling being the loop of last resort.
Yeah, but what does he mean by that? What's a loop? Obviously, loop of last resort would be an amazing band name, but what does it mean?
So in the circular economy, like Ken mentions there about flows, so there's this idea that materials, products, services flow down the system, the process, and then kind of loop back round. So like the loop of last resort, so recycling is like really energy intensive, it's really full on, and you lose a lot of value out of the product or the service. And what we're trying to do is like move those materials away from that recycling loop.
Right, so recycling should only be done as a last resort in a way.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it's a great thing to do, but you need to move away from recycling being the resort to it being the last resort. So, in fact, I asked Ken about what other loops there are, which could be a better resort.
Well, you can start with the one where you don't lose the product anyway. So you do product maintenance, or you do product refurbishment, or you repair it, or you utilise components from it, or you utilise the materials in defined sections. So you don't have to take it down to or mash it up. You could be selling materials as strips or parts or whatever. So it's on the way towards breaking up, but what else can be done with it that's profitable? And that's usually by design though. You can't just say, oh, I've got this product, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
You've got to think first, what's my plan for what's next? And that's the key thinking. Actually, the thinking is before you've even made the product very often or designed the system. What's next? If you can't answer the question, what's next? It's very hard to do something satisfactory in a circular economy sense. Design is integral to it.
So it seems here that Ken is saying we can't just bolt the circular economy onto the systems that we already have in place?
You can do, but you're not going to get the best outcome. That's the point. Because it's a bit like saying, oh, well, what do I do with all this stuff that I happen to have made? Oh, it's a real problem. Rather than saying, if we plan it right, this will fit the system, it'll be, waste will be food for the system. Because that's where we take our insights from living systems, where everything that goes in and out is food, it's a nutrient really. It's either a technical nutrient for the industrial system or it fits the biocycle. And, well, it's really so simple sometimes it really doesn't need me to explain it. Almost everybody gets that, it's just we don't do it.
Yeah.
We don't design that way.
That was really interesting, and he said it was really simple.
Yeah.
It kind of, I have loads more questions, so I don't know if it was particularly simple to me. I mean, I like the idea of it designing in the end at the start. That was quite interesting.
Yes, yeah, that's kind of a key part of the circular economy, is kind of having that start with the end in mind. But yeah.
And stop mashing things up and think about what you do with it before you mash it up. I like that as well.
Yeah, and that is a massive problem that we do have within the waste industry. Like, so if you think about a car, it starts off as this beautiful, pristine car that you drive around for 150,000 miles, and then it gets turned into a cube, and that's it. It's done.
Something that you did mention that I didn't know what it meant was the biocycle.
Yes, so this is the idea within the circular economy about you need to work on a butterfly. Like, there's a butterfly diagram that kind of connects the two cycles of the biocycle and the bionutrients, and then you've got the technical nutrients on the other wing of this butterfly. So you've got left and right wings, and I think actually Amanda from MMU talks about this.
Myself and you were very well aware of the MacArthur Foundation. They differentiate between the two different systems, a biological and technical system. So the biological system follows a similar path as our natural cycles, where one species' waste is another one's food. And I think by rethinking the design of products and components, we could actually look at building capacity in terms of biodegradable items that go back into the ground on the biological side. And things like washing machines and mobiles and fridges that we know don't biodegrade, they are what they term as being the technical system. And where we need to go with these types of materials is to try and unlock the valuable metals and the polymers and the alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of an individual product. And if you put these two systems together and we adopt different approaches, it basically enables, in a nutshell, the goods of today being the resources of tomorrow. It sounds very simplistic, but we both know it's not that easy. We know it's not that easy, don't we, Tom?
So I'm starting to get the circular economy bit. Don't, design it well in the first place. Design it so you know where it's going to go when it's ended.
Exactly, yes. And so, you kind of have that design path in mind. That system thinking, I suppose some people talk about it like that, to make products and materials, products and services kind of fit these different loops within the butterfly diagram. So you've got maintenance, reuse, distribute, refurbish, remanufacture, but then also recycle there at the end that Ken talks about. Like, it is part of that loop, and it's all about trying to make them all that little bit better than what we've got at the moment. And also, as you do that, you get more value out of these products.
You say that though, that sounds simple and easy and amazing. So why aren't people doing it? How does the economy come into this? Obviously, we talked for years about how people design in the end of something's life deliberately, so you have to buy a new one. So that's the economy of like the model that we have now. So How does the economy come into this? Why is it a circular economy?
Why is it the circular economy? It is a good question, and so I thought there'd be a really good person to ask. So this is Amir from the University of Bradford. He's the Associate Dean of their MBA programme, all about the circular economy.
My name is Professor Amir Sharif. I am Professor of Circular Economy in the School of Management at the University of Bradford. Our whole of our, if we can put it this way, capitalist or capital-driven economy for many, many years, and this goes all the way back to, great economists like Adam Smith and others, all the way through to the great captains and men and women of industry over the years that have supported and extracted the most amount of value and capital, let's be honest, from products and services. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's largely been the basis of an industrial society, except now we are moving into a new type of economy. And we've been saying this for years, of course, since the advent of the internet and digital technologies. But we now really are moving into a different type of responsible economy, you could say. Yes, an industry 4.0, but maybe in an industry 5.0, where we are seeing a more and more deeper integration of technology and the natural world of technology and humans as well. And so if we're in that sort of world now, we need to be very, very careful about how we impact the world around us, but also in terms of the efficiencies efficiency gains we can make out of machines, out of economies. We largely know now how those efficiencies can be made. There are no more efficiencies to be gained, really, in most types of businesses, in most types of machinery, in most types of system. So what else can we do? Well, what are the opportunities there? Well, the opportunities are clearly in terms of effectiveness. And again, this is this idea that Ken and others have talked about a lot, Walter Stahl and other people involved in concepts such as the blue economy, donut economics as well, but also what the Ellen MacArthur Foundation has been saying for a while, which is how can we actually shift the perception of effectiveness of a business. And that means looking at these ideas, once again, of reuse and regeneration, and benefit beyond into the wider community, into a wider set of stakeholders. So it really is quite a different concept that we're talking about when we talk about circular economy.
So I mean, when I was talking to Amir about this, it was a concept I've just never heard before, this kind of move from being efficient to effective. Because I've always been told, be efficient, be better. And then talking to Amir, it's this whole idea that switched in my head of, like, you can be brilliantly efficient at something, but it's absolutely useless the thing you're being efficient at. And then, but actually, if you want to be effective, like, that's all you need to be, just be effective. And then Amir kind of added on to that of actually being efficiently effective, which...
That's complicated.
I know,
efficiently effective.
Yeah. So, like, but I think that's just so neat.
Well, have you got an example of being efficiently effective? Or what's efficiency and what's effectiveness? Like, I think you've said those words so much now they've both lost complete meaning to me.
Yeah, no, and that happened with me as well. So, again, Amir was talking about Ken. That's Ken Webster, who I interviewed at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. He puts it really, really well.
What's the difference between being efficient and being effective? And efficiency is, actually there's no purpose to it. If you think about it, it's just input and output, and how do you do that with as least energy and effort, right? It's not making any judgment about it. But if I say I want an effective lungs, lungs as a system, what's it for? Well, it's the part of maintaining your body. It's effective, it's got a purpose, as far as you imagine it, to function so that all of your body gets the oxygen it needs and the carbon dioxide it's expelled. It's got a purpose. So effective systems always have a purpose. If you can play with that one, because they close the loop, but they close the loop to do this. It's a bit like your bloodstream. It's no point if it doesn't go to your toes, because eventually it's going to die, and then maybe you get gangrene, and then you're going to die. And the whole thing can be undone because there's a problem at the periphery. It's not just, whereas efficiency might be, how's your heart today? Oh, that's pumping really well, but that doesn't tell you whether the whole system is working well, you see. So the purpose of the whole human body system is to maintain itself through time. Whereas an efficient body system could be, it's very efficient, but you won't last very long because you're totally wired, and you convert all this energy, but you're going to burn yourself up, in a sense. It's sort of like people who overdo things in their youth, and then all their joints and all the rest of it. That's not an effective long-term system. It became very efficient, and you burnt that energy, and you did that work, and it's hardly fit for purpose going forward. So that's the thing to play with. We're looking for effective materials management systems, which have a purpose, which is to make materials stocks, which are replenished, and feedback is sensible in that, and is valued. And it's not that hard, but it is a bit of a change from how we tend to deal with it, which is, if we're efficient, we're better, but we don't really make a judgment. Like if you're cleaning the stuff off the streets in Manchester, yeah, you can be really efficient, but that job was just to clean it off the streets. It wasn't to say, how do we make this an effective materials management system? And people go, well, my job's just to do the streets, which is fair enough, that is the job. But somebody has to ask the question, how does this fit with the whole thing? And we seem to be scared of asking that question these days. How does it fit with the whole system? We don't do it very much. You just go, oh, my job's to do this. Then I'm going home.
So he's talking about, like, everyone's just in their own little box.
Yeah.
Not really thinking about the bigger picture. I thought that was really interesting. And now I know what effective and efficient are. Basically, we make loads of rubbish, and there's no point making that really, really well if no one wants it and it has no reason for being.
Exactly.
Like, when you go into a corner shop and there's loads of cheap plastic toys, they're just like a waste of space and time. And they're probably made really cheaply and efficiently.
Yes, really efficiently. Get loads of them. They're out there in the wild. Brilliant. We've made loads of them. Made them every year. We make them faster and faster and faster. Great. Why? That's it's not effective. And again, Ken says, oh, it's not that hard, but it honestly, talking with Ken and Amir about this, I couldn't get it because I think I'm hardwired to look for efficiency savings. I've always done it in every job I've done. And it's just the idea of, actually, what are you doing and why are you doing it first? And then take a step back and be like, so you can make your little box, like you said, as efficient as physically possible. But if the one before you and the one after you is rubbish, then what's the point? You have to take a step back, look at the whole system, and get that whole system to become effective. And that's really exciting. That feels like That's a monumental shift, I think.
It is, because no one's doing it.
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
you said, it's kind of almost like Ken was saying, really simple and almost obvious.
Yeah.
So why don't people do it?
I think it's because it's always been that way. Like, we've always just done, I've looked after my job, I've built the stuff I've built, my consumers want it, my boss wants it that way, my clients want it that way, whatever. It's in that kind of, it's always done that way. But actually it needs someone to take a step back and probably spend a lot of time doing systems thinking, to look at the whole system that they incorporate and then go, there we go. That's how we need to be effective. But the whole idea of like the linear economy is based on being efficient, not being effective. Yeah?
Yes.
Whereas the circular economy, because it revolves around this interconnectedness of different people, it needs to be the other one. I got them mixed up in my head.
The other one.
Effective.
Effective. I've got it written down here. I am looking at my notes.
I know, yeah.
It's effective.
Yeah, like it needs to be effective and it needs to kind of all connect up. And that's a kind of the three pillars of the circular economy as well. So you've got close the loop, you've got slow the flow, and you've got narrow the palette. So you need to make sure that the products that you make are thought about so they can go back into the loop. Then you need to actually just slow the amount of products that are being made. So make them effectively rather than just efficiently. And then narrow the amount of products that are out there and what they're made out of. So then they can effectively go back around these loops.
Is this going to make it more expensive for people? Because what you're saying sounds really bespoke and expensive. Do products become more expensive in the circular economy?
I don't think so. No, they don't. It doesn't have to, but I think there's always going to be a transition period where people will try to make profit gains from it, because we're built on the linear economy, which is all about making as much money as fast as possible, and all about kind of scale. So scaling up your products that you've got and get them out there as quickly as you can. Whereas there's another idea that we'll talk about later about this scope, which is the circular economy is all about the effectiveness of scope within your business models and your business offerings. So if you can get a lot of things out there that benefit a lot of different people and like interconnect your business models with other people's business models, then costs should go down. Should. But people are part of the problem. So
I mean, I agree with you there.
So, and then there's all part of this. So the cost elements as well kind of fit in with this idea of no zero burden. So this is the concept that I've kind of...
No zero burden.
No zero burden. So it's this concept within the circular economy where people, manufacturers, retailers, local authorities, everyone throughout the system that you live and work in shouldn't have free reign to the products that you rate.
Okay, so you do have a burden. Everyone has a burden. Is what it's saying
on the products that they make.
That's is that a double negative? Because that confused me.
Yeah,
no zero burden. So it's like you do have a burden.
Yes. So at the moment, companies are out there that will make cheap goods very effectively, and they will have no burden on what happens to it next. It'll just be like, yeah, we've created it, it's released into the world, it will end up in landfill. We don't have to worry about it, we made it cheap, everyone wanted it, fantastic. But then the cost of getting rid of it's really expensive. So I heard about this concept and I went to talk to a man about it. That man is Amir from the University of Bradford.
So basically this is the concept that for any given product, less so services, but for any given product, who has the burden, the responsibility for the end of life of that product? Let's take a plastic bottle again because it's so much in the news. So when you buy a drink from a shop, you buy that drink, and it might be in a plastic bottle. When you finish with that drink, water or whatever else it is in there, whose responsibility is it to deal with that empty bottle? Well, it's you, the consumer. Now, the idea of no zero burden goes like this. Well, you as a consumer, because you've purchased that product, you now have responsibility for getting rid of that empty product. or reusing it. Now, consumers at the moment, they don't really have a stake directly in reusing or regenerating or recycling that bottle. Yes, they can put it in a bottle bank or whatever, and maybe even recover some money from it. But really, they don't really have a stake in it. The issue with this current model that we have now is that the producers of that plastic bottle, they have no stake or responsibility in relation to the end of life of that plastic bottle. So the manufacturer of that plastic bottle really has given up all their rights. They've given up all of their responsibilities once they've sold you that item, or it's been manufactured. And so the idea behind a no zero burden assumption in a circular economy, this is a title that comes from a title of an academic paper by Danica Illich and colleagues from Linköping University in Sweden. The idea here is that, well, perhaps producers and manufacturers should have more of a responsibility towards the end of life of products that they produce. And that means that if we adopt, and if manufacturers and producers adopt a circular economy approach to producing products and services, that they actually have as much responsibility as you, as the consumer, in dealing with the end of life of that product. Now, that has massive implications for reducing or eliminating waste. And of course, as we know, the purpose of circular economy is to have zero waste, or as close to zero waste as possible. So if we can get more and more companies, organizations, manufacturers, and indeed waste companies too, and consumers and communities involved in understanding the removal of the burden of waste, removing that burden and saying, well, let me take that plastic bottle off you. Let's see if we can reintegrate it back into a production cycle. This is the idea. Another big idea within circular economy is using waste as food. Well, not literally as edible food, but waste as resource for creating new products and services. So that's what the no zero burden idea is about, and it's really, really a nice concept that many people can relate to, and it's something that is now being discussed quite a lot in the literature too.
I like Amir. He says a lot of things that I've been saying for years, mainly because I'm lazy. Like, I really struggle with recycling. I'm a bit of a hippie. I like to look after the world. Yeah. But I find recycling a massive pain, and it's difficult. And what plastic goes in there? Which is the glass bin again? I've forgotten. So I hate it when I buy something from a supermarket and it's covered in stuff that I don't need, and I have to find a way of disposing it. And I wished that the supermarket will have just not given me that in the first place. So I've always liked this idea of like the organisations that are creating the rubbish to have more responsibility. I don't want the responsibility, is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it makes perfect sense as well, because if like why should you have that responsibility when you know so little about that the materials in that product? So let's think about an example, like a building. Like if you buy a building and then you have to get rid of it, it's ruined, it's broken, so you have to demolish it. Like as a building owner, like you don't know what's in it, so you're just gonna have to junk all of it. Whereas if you have a better understanding of every single material, everything, every design decision that was made as part of the list of the spec that you've got, and people had a responsibility to every single item within that building, then that becomes really exciting, because you just go, okay, I've finished with the building, it's no longer up, like I can't look after it anymore. The manufacturer of that builder, those contractors come in and go, right, we'll take this all apart now, and all of these bits are now ours again. We have that money, that value from those bits again. And I think it's quite interesting as a concept.
It is quite interesting, and thinking about kind of the capitalist culture that we're in as well, and everyone's after more money, that seems like, why would you throw that away if it's worth something? Wouldn't you want it back at the end of the process?
Yeah, definitely.
Seems.
Yeah, no, true, because, and then like Ken briefly touched on it before about this idea of stock management. So you become to own those materials throughout their whole life, but also what ties into that as well is something that Ken from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation talks about is this idea of price should tell the truth. So when you buy something, you actually understand all of the costs that have gone into that product. So I'll get Ken to talk about it a little bit more.
It's one of those bedrock things. You're never going to be getting around that in some sense. If price tells the truth, if price really reflects the full cost, we get a bit more rational market for these things. And at the moment, many of these costs are hidden or ending up in microplastics in the ocean or whatever. You don't even know where it's come from, but you certainly know it's going to do harm.
So it all sounds like it makes better sense than the previous model to me. Well, why aren't we doing it? Is this a new concept? How long has the circular economy idea been around, and why aren't we doing it?
The idea of the circular economy has been around for like a long time, but it's taken a lot of kind of understanding from lots of different people to really get it into the mainstream. So Ellen MacArthur, the woman that went around the world in the boat, the yacht, she, after she came back from her round the world trip, such an understatement.
Little holiday.
She was just like, actually no, like we need to combat this issue that we've got, and actually the circular economy works really, really well. Like it's not about it's not this hippie idea. It's not just about recycling. Like it connects all of these things together, and I think it just took a group of individuals to really take it by the scruff of its neck and drag it into the world to go, actually, this is the way it should be. Like talking to Amir, like he sees a future where it'll be like, we used to have this thing called the linear economy, and now we just have the economy. And I think that's like, we just need to work towards that. So yeah, it is a breakthrough idea at the moment, but people are starting to do it. And that's really fascinating, the stuff that they're working on.
And that's really important to me, because we've talked a lot today about theory and about changes to systems and thinking, but we need to look about how that works practically, right? With some real examples, because the circular economy sounds like the right solution to me. It's really exciting. But the big question in my mind is, does it work? Next time on Tech for Good Live and the Circular Economy, we look at the real-world examples from some of the UK's biggest retailers. We also find out that Apple have a robot called Daisy that can rip mobile phones apart, but in a good way, apparently. This podcast wouldn't exist without Tom Passmore and Sophie Walker from Dsposal. Music has been graciously provided by George Fell. Podcast.co make all of this possible thanks to the shiny podcast studio they provide. Thanks to the Disruptive Innovation Festival. I've been, and will continue to be, Rebecca Ray Evans. Thanks also to Paul Jakubowski and Johnny Ray Evans from the Tech for Good Live team.